This is a follow-up to my last video about Bob the Science Guy, where he looks at a photo of this, the shadow coming off Mount Rainier, and proclaims that we live on a spinning ball because of this photo. And so what this video is about is I'm going to show that this is actually proof that we live on a flat Earth. Let's go.
Now, most people that would look at this photograph would realize that in order for the mountain to cast that shadow on the clouds above it, the sun had to be coming from an angle or an altitude lower than the peak of the mountain. This is not something that really needs to be explained most of the time. It's rather self-evident.
Well, actually, it's not self-evident, Bob. Not if you rigorously investigate possibilities of why or how this could be happening. And you know what's going on? The top of the mountain is actually above the clouds. So, and what we see there is a shadow cast from the top of the mountain. You see, it's impossible to cast a shadow on the underside of clouds when the object that's casting the shadow, the top of the mountain, is above those clouds. The only possibility is casting a shadow down on the clouds, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video. I'm going to prove to you that the sun is always higher than the peak of the mountains. And I'm going to show you that this shadow that you think is going up is not going up. It can't be going up. It's impossible for it to physically actually be angled up. It's only visually angling up. Okay, let's go. So I have these new photos, Bob, taken by mountain climbers on the top of the mountains at daybreak, okay? And so I'm going to use what you just said, looking at this picture. Ready? Now, most people that would look at this photo would realize that in order for that mountain to cast that shadow downward onto the tops of the clouds at daybreak, the sun had to be coming from an angle or altitude higher than the peak of the mountain. This is not something that needs to be explained most of the times. Bob's arrogance right there and condescension. It's rather self-evident. Well, Bob, you're going to eat those words, right? Because you just debunked the spinning ball. Because all the shadows are down on top of the clouds, which means the sun has to be higher than the peak of the mountain in order to cast a shadow on the top of the clouds. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Yes, my friends, Bobby. And this is daybreak. Excellent work, Bob. You just helped debunk the spinning ball Earth. All right, back to this picture for a second, Bob. Besides all the logical fallacies and presuppositions you just committed in your opening statement, there's another one that you did in there, and I covered these in my last video on you. And so here you are, Bob, jumping to an absolutely amateurish and wrong conclusion because you don't understand perspective. You're making an amateurish declaration, especially for a self-proclaimed science guy who should know enough to investigate more rigorously a visual phenomenon such as this, and not assume this or that or the other. You're assuming that the shadow is going upward. And you're assuming that for two reasons, Bob. One is because you believe the Earth is a spinning ball and that sunset and sunrise is caused by the rotation of the Earth and having the sun being physically lower than the mountain. The other is that you don't understand perspective, even though you claim to. Now, I know you guys make fun of it and call it flirspective, and the only reason you call it that is because you don't understand it. You've never learned it. You understand, right, that those clouds are not actually angled up and that the shadow needs to be cast on something. So the shadow is cast on the clouds. And so the clouds are parallel to the ground. They are not actually angled up. So what you're seeing is a perspective illusion. Okay, here's an example. I made this. This is CGI. I know you guys don't like CGI. You made a big deal out of that CGI image from my last video and said that, oh, why don't you represent it with a photo? Because you can. It won't look like that. Well, I got news for you. I'm going to go out and get that photo for you. It'll be in my next video, so stay tuned for that one. Anyway, so this is an orthographic view of a shadow, or side view. It's 2 miles high off the ground, 2 miles off the ground, and it's a mile wide. And it's cast on the clouds. And looking through this little window, this is what it would look like, right? Clouds are parallel to the ground. This shadow would go right across the screen like this, right across your vision, and would be parallel to the ground. Now, if you look at it head on and it's coming towards you, okay, that's going to be on your eye line, right? and that's going to be your perspective view, it's going to look a lot different. Now brace yourselves, because this is going to wreck your little claim that this shadow is going up. You are completely missing the boat, because you make fun of perspective and you don't understand perspective. You're going to be proven wrong right now, okay? Hold on to your seat. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom, bam, there it is. This is the same shadow as the orthographic view right here, but this is head on. And it's the same as this, Bob, your picture of Mount Rainier's shadow. Here's 2 miles off the ground. Here's 2 miles off the ground. Here's 2 miles off the ground, or 2 miles high. Here's a mile wide, what it looks like way back there at the horizon. Here's what a mile wide looks like here. Here's what a mile wide looks like here. It's climbing in the sky visually, but in reality, it's dead straight, flat, horizontal, parallel to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. And this proves that CGI that I did in the last video. This is how it appears to go up. Okay? Sorry to destroy your ball earth evidence. It's not. It's flat earth evidence. And notice that the shadow starts right below the peak of the mountain and at the top of the clouds. And that shows you that the peak of the mountain is up in the clouds. So the shadow is starting below the peak of the mountain. And it's staying parallel to the ground. It's not actually coming up, and it's not actually spreading out. It's just flirspective, Bob. Okay, big mistake you guys make in your arrogance, right, and your quickness to make fun. You idiots miss the obvious. And what's obvious here is that the shadow cannot be going upwards, because the shadow is on the clouds, and the clouds are not going upwards. The clouds are parallel to the ground. Okay, so I don't want to get too involved in this right now, because I will cover this in my next video. I'll cover all the perspective of the shadows like that you see in and around and on these mountains. Okay, so this is a picture from the top of Mount Hood, and it's over 11,000 feet high. And at the crack of dawn, it's casting a shadow on top of the clouds. Okay, so what would that look like underneath? Well, let's go to the picture you put up. Or even better, let's see this picture that's more head-on, so you can see the exact relationship. On the ground, from where you're standing, the person who took this picture, this is what you would see. So the sun is not casting its shadow upward to the underside of the clouds. It's casting a shadow on top of the clouds, which is also shading the bottom of the clouds. But now I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but look at the underside of the clouds are lit. That's another one you guys do. Well, it's reflection. It's primarily reflection, because of the fact that you can see when you're standing by water like this, that reflection between you and the sun is only for you. Someone on the side cannot see that. See how the clouds get lit up just between you and the sun? That's unique to the observer. Right? 2 people standing on the beach both have a line between them and the sun, right? But it's not real. It's just a reflection. Okay, and the reflection, is different than the shadow. The shadow is something that is actually there and everybody can see it from different angles. A reflection, if you look in the mirror, you may see yourself. If you change your angle, you won't see yourself. You'll see something else. And somebody else at a different angle looking in the mirror will see something else entirely different. So, being that the sun is lower than the clouds from your perspective, that's why it'll appear to light the underside. And that's it. Okay? So if you guys want to see any more on this, I did a video about how the undersides of the clouds are lit. I'll leave a link in the description. Okay? Check that out. And so there you go. This is awesome proof now for the flat earth, where the sun always stays above the height of the mountains and casts the shadow down, unlike the spinning ball model where the sun would actually go below the clouds and the peak of the mountain. Because this supposed shadow being cast on the underside of the clouds is not what's happening at all. It's the shadow cast from above the clouds that's darkening the entire cloud. And this is what it looks like from down below. And this is what it looks like from above. So you looking at this picture, you might actually think that the shadow is going up. Well, if you think that, you probably think that the clouds are actually getting higher as they get near you, or that these light poles are actually getting taller as they approach you. But they're not. They're parallel to the ground. Okay, so a real quick way to get these 2 photos, because how are they the same? I mean, this one's spreading out weird like that from the ground level, and on top pinches off. Easy way to get this is just look at some train tracks, right? The tracks opening up as they come towards you is the view from underneath the cloud, and the way the railroad tracks pinch in the distance is the view from above the clouds. Okay, so let's go higher. Let's go up to Mount Rainier. And a shout out to a couple commenters who mentioned that the top of Mount Rainier is actually above the cloud layer. So I did some digging, research, and sure enough, yep, it is. So here's a picture from Mount Rainier, and at daybreak, again, you can see the shadow goes down, and it forms a pyramid, a nice perspective pyramid, on the top of the clouds, which is only possible if the sun is above the peak of the mountain, right, Bob? And again, this is daybreak. Okay, and here's another one from the top of Mount Rainier. No clouds present that I can tell. The shadow is being cast on the ground. Daybreak again. Proving, Bob, that the sun has to be higher than the peak of the mountain. And Mount Rainier is over 14,000 feet. And one more thing to point out here is that the top of the mountain that's just above the cloud layer is right where the shadow starts on the mountain. Could this be more evidence, Bob, that the shadow is actually on the top of the clouds? Just like we see here, because the top of the mountain is above the clouds, and that's where it would cast its shadow? And isn't that evidence for the flat earth, where the sun is always above the mountain, as opposed to your model, where the sun goes down due to the rotation of the earth and is actually below the mountain? I love that this is something you brought up as a spinning ball model proof, and here I've just turned it around and showed it's really a flat earth proof. Thank you, Bob. And Bob, I realize your spinning spaceball religion is being destroyed right now. You're triggered, but get a grip, man. Put the hammer down. Bob, you're backing a loser. The ball earth is over. It's time to get on the P-Brain train, Bob, and head to truth land. Okay, come on. Let's go on. So let's go up even higher. Okay, and here we have Mount Denali, also known as Mount McKinley. Mount Denali. Shadow down on the ground. Again, sorry, Bob, more proof that the sun is higher than the peak of the mountains. And this is daybreak. That's 20,000 feet. Mount Rainier is 14,000 feet. But let's go all the way to the Mac Daddy. Mount Everest at 30,000 feet. And as you can read here, sunrise on Everest summit. Okay? So, the shadow is clearly down. And what does the sun have to be? Higher than the peak of the mountain? Or why don't you help me out with this one, Bob? Let me borrow a little bit from your opener again. Now, most people that would look at this photo would realize that in order for that mountain to cast that shadow downward onto the tops of the clouds at daybreak, the sun had to be coming from an angle or altitude higher than the peak of the mountain. This is not something that needs to be explained most of the times. It's rather self-evident. Yes, Bob, so this is rather self-evident. And most people would look at this and say that, yeah, the sun has to be higher than the peaks of the mountains to cast shadows downward at the break of dawn or at sunset, right? So you, like I said earlier, you just debunked the spinning ball, because we always see this shadow in the morning and at the end of the day, sunset, from the perspective of the mountain, which proves the sun to be always higher than the peaks of the mountains. And the shadow knows. The shadow doesn't lie. And there you have it, folks. A thorough demolition of the supposed spinning ball proof. A delicious irony indeed, as we turn a spinning ball proof into a flat earth proof. Okay, if you also think this video was awesome, please thumbs it up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Share a link to this video in your social media. I'm not very connected in that way, so that would definitely help. Feel free to mirror this video, but please don't edit it. And if you haven't bought a shirt or a mug yet, please do. Thank you in advance for your support. It's time to proclaim this loudly and publicly, and wearing a t-shirt is a great way to do that. I was wearing my brane perspective shirt yesterday at a function, and it was so fun to see people checking it out. And I was just waiting for someone to come up and say, "Hey, are you a flat earther?" or something like that, you know, get a little conversation. Nothing happened, but still, wearing the shirt made the experience so much fun. I have a link in the description for my store, so go buy one as soon as you can, please. And I'm wearing a large premium tee. In this picture, this is my brane perspective shirt. I recommend the premium tee or the comfort tee. The comfort tee is a little bit shorter and slightly looser fit. I have both and I love both. Super soft. Love them. All right. Thank you so much, and expect another video very soon, very quickly, okay, on this same subject and showing all the perspective stuff. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.